The tough customer, handling challenging client behaviors. For mental health workers, important skills, understandings, and principles related to dealing with challenging client behaviors. Though much of what you will see and hear in this presentation relates to the practice of psychotherapy, some of the material can be adapted and utilized by those in any helping profession where people's skills matter, and the objective is to help the client overcome both behavioral as well as internal barriers to improved mental health and well-being. Now, how about a little overview of the tough customer or the provocative client, you might say? First, some introductory remarks, and then a closer look at specific challenging client behaviors. Woo-ha! I got a little bit ahead of myself. Let me back up. This is the first video in a video series that will address challenging client behaviors. Today, we will look at what community mental health clinics unfortunately know a little too well: no-shows and frequent cancellations. In follow-up sequels, we'll be looking at issues ranging from sitting on the fence, waffling, and equivocating behaviors, combative behaviors, defensive compliance and defiance, the client who chronically feels misunderstood and slighted, the external locus of control, mistrusting clients, clients who are looking for a magic bullet from you, and more. The topic of challenging client behaviors needs a proper introduction, addressing provocations immediately and having proper perspective. Provocative behaviors must be dealt with as soon as they occur to prevent us from building up resentment towards our clients. We best deal with these behaviors by being frank, but clear that we're keeping the client's best interest in mind, not retaliating or venting our own frustrations. Direct and frank does not have to be unkind. We need to remember that no matter how provocative a client might be, there is a person underneath their provocative defense mechanisms, and that person is engaging in behavior that at one point in their lives helped them adapt to a difficult situation. And the client needs help in seeing that behaviors that once served them have likely outlived their usefulness. A failure to skillfully address difficult client behaviors can easily lead to provider resentment and frustration, which prevents us from enjoying our work and feeling positive about our clients. And also, it can easily manifest in subtle acting out behaviors on our part. The ideal provider stance and attitude. In dealing with challenging client behaviors, our default stance should be one of open-mindedly and with curiosity seeking to understand the meaning and function of the behavior while also helping the client in a non-shaming manner understand the consequences of their behaviors. In some situations, we also need to be firm and forceful. We also want to strive for a general attitude of not needing our clients to change, accepting them the way they are, what some may call neutrality, while also having enough concern and investment in their well-being. And though we do not need our clients to change, we are also not impartial in regards to the client's well-being and progress. The optimal provider attitude, therefore, is one of neutrality in the sense of accepting our clients and not needing them to change for our sake, while also refraining from being indifferent and impartial and being open and honest that we certainly do have preferences and opinions, though we do not in any way, shape, or form want our clients to be controlled by our preferences and our opinions. Now, no-shows and frequent cancellations. And no one who has worked in a community mental health clinic knows anything about this, right? First, common provider mistakes. Not addressing and trying to understand the pattern of frequent no shows or cancellations. Alternatively, scolding, lecturing, and threatening the client. And we do come off as scolding and threatening if we begin by underscoring our no show policies before we seek to understand the client behaviors. Not addressing the behavior and instead becoming frosty, aloof, or disengaged with the client. Providers are unfortunately not immune from either overt acting out or from passive aggressive behavior. Enter Jason. Jason receives mental health services at a community mental health clinic. Jason struggles with loneliness and depression in the context of difficulties making and keeping both platonic and romantic relationships. He has a legacy of disappointed love where friends and romantic partners have left him, starting with a rejecting family of origin where he was the black sheep of the family. Jason walks in for an appointment, having no showed several prior appointments before. Let's look at the interaction between Jason and his mental health provider. What follows are some general responses on the part of the mental health professional in response to general inconsistencies in attendance. I'm interested in getting to what's on your mind and your priorities for our meeting today. But before we do that, can we look at what's going on that you haven't been coming here regularly? It can be very important for the therapist to really probe into the underlying meaning of the behavior. What does it mean? I just want to understand. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it isn't, but I just want to understand so I'm not flying blind here. Can you just be honest with me about what happened? That you have been inconsistent and withdrawing from regularly attending our appointments. And now a specific response on the part of the mental health provider to Jason's most recent cancellation, where he did not provide an explanation for the cancellation. So you canceled last time, and I just want to understand why. Can we look at what was going on? It may have some implications for our work, or it may not, but could you just explain it to me? Let's have a look at one way a mental health professional can respond to a specific instance where Jason no showed the previous appointment. So you had two options. You could have called and canceled or just not shown up, and you chose the latter. You just didn't show. So what do you think that was about? What were you trying to communicate by not calling to cancel? It can be important for the provider here to go out of his way to convey that his intentions are not to reprimand the client, but to understand the client. And also to go out of his way to convey that he's focused on the needs of the clients. I'm just trying to understand this since there's a chance that this is clinically significant to the issues that you're wanting my help with.
I just forgot, man. That's all. I simply forgot about it.
Uh-huh. And at what point did you realize that you had forgotten? At that moment, that you realized it. Uh, what went through your mind when you decided not to respond to me and let me know that you weren't going to attend our last appointment?
It's hard to say, really. It's hard to find the right words here, I suppose.
You think we can work together to put that into words? And then, if you decide to not cancel again, at least we will both know what it means. Important therapeutic skills, pattern recognition, and helping the client see the downside. It's becoming a pattern for you to withdraw from our work and not attend regularly and consistently, isn't it? Is that just here with me and our appointments, or are you this way with others and other areas of your life?
I do this with a lot of people. It's just how I am, I guess.
Do you forget movie dates and things like that you look forward to?
Well, no, I don't forget things like that.
Could forgetting our appointments say something about how you feel about coming here and our work together?
Yeah, yeah. I think you got me there. It's a bit overwhelming sometimes to come in and talk about my personal problems.
Of course, it can be overwhelming. I'm glad you are able to recognize that. So, are we thinking that one way that you deal with overwhelm is to withdraw and be alone?
Well, it's true. Yes, it's yes.
Well, that is certainly your right to do that. I'm also remembering, however, that feeling alone is something you have often complained about and mentioned as something central to your depression. And withdrawing seems to leave you alone. How is withdrawing working for you?
Here, it's important that the psychotherapist is asking the question of how is it working for you with an open mind and not with a snarky gotcha tone. Now, let's underscore some important principles. That understanding specific triggers or pattern generating precipitants, and then empathizing with the client's conflict, and then highlighting the stark consequences of maintaining the status quo, and then inviting choice. Let's see how these therapeutic methods and principles might actually play out.
Not really. After the last meeting, I just thought I could do it on my own. That I don't really need the help.
Oh, I see. But then that begs the question,
Why did you come back?
It wasn't working. The loneliness, then, that became overwhelming.
so that wasn't working out either. The overwhelm followed you. You're between a rock and a hard place, aren't you? So we seem to have established that there's something to talking about your personal problems that brings up a lot of feelings in you and they overwhelm you. Naturally, you don't want to experience that kind of overwhelm and anxiety, so you deal with that by withdrawing and being alone. But then the loneliness overwhelms you, so you're in a pickle.
That about sums it up. But at least the loneliness, it's familiar to me.
Well, I can certainly appreciate that you would be drawn to at least what's familiar, even if it's painful and overwhelming. It seems like this is a tough choice for you. That asking you to come in and talk about your personal problems, it's really a big ask of you.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What if we can help you find a way to deal with the overwhelm of your feelings when you talk about your life problems that doesn't involve having to remove and isolate yourself? That doesn't involve having to avoid relationships and be alone. Where you're walled off and avoiding dealing with your life problems. Would that appeal to you?
Sure, but it seems daunting.
I can certainly appreciate that. But going through life, not facing things, having a therapeutic relationship become one more disappointment in your life where your needs don't get met, and then you move on from here not having relationship, and one day being 80 years old, realizing that you're still alone. Is there something daunting about that prospect as well?
Yibbity yikes. When you put it that way.
So, is that how you really want to live your life? Or do you think that you and I together, with each other's help, me in my role and you in yours, at your pace, can begin to help you deal with your feelings here so that they don't always have to overwhelm you so much.
No more. I don't want to live like this no more. I'm ready. Let's do what we gotta do. Let's do this.
Notice that the provider in these examples have not once brought up the no-show policy, though at the stage where the provider underscores the consequences and downsides of the pattern, the provider could also add that one more downside, if the pattern continues, is that Jason will not be able to see the provider anymore due to the no-show policy. But in this context, it's underscored not as a penalty, but as just one more reminder of the downside to perpetuating the pattern. This may seem like a subtle difference, but it's the difference in preventing a situation where Jason starts to see the provider as a punishing figure. This is generally something we want to avoid in the helping professions. Notice that the provider addressed the issue with Jason in a way that connected to his initial presenting problems, which involved depression and loneliness in the context of relationship problems. The principle here is that the provider should always make sure that what they're doing with the client connects with the client's priorities and the client's agenda, and never simply push their own priorities or their own agenda onto the client. That will be all for now when it comes to Jason, no-shows, and frequent cancellations. A look ahead. The client sitting on the fence, the combative behaviors, defensive compliance and defiance, and more.